Welcome to another episode of the Hat Collecting Talk Show, where we talk about the many different metaphorical hats that we all wear in our lives. I am your host, Lacey Artemis, and I am a creative Jill of all trades. And each episode, I interview a different person to learn about the different hats that they wear, the things that they do, how they got into them, and things they've learned along the way. Because nobody does just one thing, and everyone has a story. I keep messing this intro up because it's kind of long. Today, my guest is Caroline, and Caroline is a software developer, a gamer of all different types, and widely active outdoors as well. Caroline is active on Twitter, where she posts quippy tweets, in my opinion, and fights for trans rights. Caroline's pronouns are she and they for the listeners. Thank you for joining me today, Caroline.
No problem. It is nice to be here.
How's your day going so far?
Well, I woke up at noon, and it's been pretty good since then.
That's good.
I like waking up at noon.
So I guess we'll start kind of the way that I'm starting this now is kind of a two-part thing. Whereabouts did you grow up? And actually, let's just start with that. Whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up all over Louisiana, which is like, for people not in the U.S., in the southern part of the U.S.
And so I guess how long did you spend there?
Pretty much all of my life until I was 14 or 15, and then I moved to Texas for a very short period of time, and then I moved back to Louisiana.
So the question that I start when I kind of ask about where people grew up, what would you say is what would you say is the most true and most false stereotype about, I guess, Louisiana that you can think of?
I'm not exactly sure what the stereotypes are for people outside of Louisiana. I kind of think about New Orleans and also Waterboy for conceptions of Louisiana. I would say the most true stereotype is that people there definitely know how to party, and hence New Orleans, but also Lafayette and Lake Charles as well. They're all pretty fun. The biggest misconception, I think, would be I feel like when people think of the South, they think of a certain stereotype, kind of, but Louisiana is pretty distinct from most of the rest of the South in that it's very derived from French culture.
I've heard that. Yeah. And so at this point, we will do a quick land acknowledgement. Do you want me to start, or do you want to do yours first?
Go right ahead.
Okay. So Toronto, or Tekaronto, is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nations, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Anishinaabe. This is a dish with one spoon treaty territory, and I am an uninvited visitor on this land.
I am currently living in Denver, Colorado, and that is an Arapaho territory and also a Cheyenne territory. I believe they shared it.
I did do, I tried to look this up as well in advance for my own kind of knowledge, and from what I saw on native-land.ca, which is the site that I recommend people check out to learn this stuff, or to start learning this stuff, I should say. Colorado looked like there was a lot going on there. So I think that one would probably take a little bit more time to really get a strong grasp on, but thanks for looking that up and acknowledging that. And just to remind, native-land.ca is not just for Canada. It covers the whole world, even though it's a .ca, which is usually a Canadian site. So with that, we will get into the show more properly. In the introduction, I kind of touched on a few of the things that you do. I know there's a lot more. I kind of tried to synthesize it down into, I guess, three main things. We like to do kind of the hat trick of the guest. So how about tell us a little bit more about the things that you do and how you got into them?
Well, the biggest thing I do is probably programming, because that's my career. When I was just kind of starting college, I suspected I would like it, but I was worried that it would ruin computers for me or something. So I started as a biology major, but I eventually took a intro to computer science course as like an elective, and it just kind of sucked me in, and it slowly took over more and more of my course load until I changed majors. For skiing, I've always like been kind of fascinated by snow and mountains, because maybe when I was growing up in Louisiana, like that was just an unattainable kind of thing. But now I'm like all about it. But skiing is a nice marriage of those two, and also I like adrenaline. For video games, when I was a kid, I would use them to disassociate, to help me with like dysphoria and generic social difficulties that are associated with childhood. And it's just been kind of a lifelong habit that I still partake in. Other outdoorsy things, camping and hiking. I was in Scouts as a kid, and also I lived in a really rural area, and being out in nature is just kind of nostalgic and relaxing.
Apologies to the podcast listeners. Again, we're dealing with some unfortunate ambient outside noise that we can't control. So the sirens shouldn't last very long when they come. Just be patient with it.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
assuming is that coming from your end? I think it is.
Yeah, I live next to a very busy street. So
okay.
that might be frequent. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can try to mute myself.
Doubly apologize to the listeners, but hopefully they understand. We don't always have control over these things. Because I was going to ask the biggest misconception in your view or your opinion, both on your career and on your hobbies.
For my career, similar to where I grew up, I don't necessarily know what other people's conceptions are of programmers. I guess when I was like in school, the misconception was that like most programmers are men who live in basements or something. That's definitely not true. But before that, like it was a different stereotype entirely. It was like programmers were all mathy, bookish women. I'm probably much more similar to that one. But like really, we're all very different from one another, and just like most other stereotypes, they're just not true. For my hobbies, video games is probably the same. Like until very recently, the stereotype for gamer was like men who live in basements, but like obviously that's not true anymore. Everyone's playing games these days. I don't know what the stereotypes are for skiers. I can't even begin to guess.
When you were a child, if you remember, what did you want to be or to do when you grew up?
Well, mostly I wanted to be a girl. Beyond that, career-wise, I think I wanted to be an astronaut at one point. I wanted to make video games at another point. Those are the big ones.
Okay. What was it about being an astronaut, if you remember, like what interested you about that?
Space is fun and cool, and it has black holes and planets and rockets.
This is true.
Science.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't trying to invalidate it. I was just like, oh, okay, please elaborate. Because, we've had a few people who've been like, oh, like dinosaurs. Like, yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, scientifically based aspirations a lot of kids have.
It's kind of like it's one of the like more, I guess, romantic kind of careers for a kid. Like there's astronaut, there's fireman, there's like big, and then there's adventure and
serving a greater purpose.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you, and this is not part of the script, but I'm just curious in the moment. So with the kind of talk that's happening more recently about people going to like start colonizing and terraforming Mars, if you were given that opportunity, it would be a one-way ticket. Would that be something you'd be interested in?
I think it depends. If there were already people there, then possibly. I do not do well with isolation, so if it were like something that wasn't an established colony, I probably wouldn't, simply because I don't think I'd be capable of that. But it is something that I would fantasize about at night.
Fair enough. Yeah, so you kind of do a bunch of things. You've kind of moved around a little bit. I'm still trying to find the way I want to ask this question. There's a lot of different ways to come at it, but I think the way I'm going to approach it today is I don't actually know your exact age, but actually, no, I do, because you told me the other day. Never mind. So, as a lot of people kind of know, there's this cultural narrative that if you do things right, if you do capitalism and normative lifestyles right, like when you're 30, you'll have everything figured out and everything's kind of good the way it's supposed to be. But that doesn't happen for most people. So I'm curious, at what age would you say you felt like you had found the right path for you, or what you felt was like the right path for you that you wanted to continue pursuing?
Probably my mid-20s, because really once I found programming and like a STEM field, I guess, I realized how attuned my method of thinking was to solving those kinds of problems. It became obvious to me that was like what I needed to do in life. It took me until really my late 20s to bring all that together, but because I was in college for like 10 years.
That's fair. Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious. And eventually, when I interview people who are like later in their lives, which I am very eager to do, I just have to find the people to do that. But I'm just very curious, because I know everyone has a different path and a different timeline, and especially trans people have very different, because we kind of have to like almost restart our lives at some point. I certainly did. So I'm just curious of how different people's kind of paths and timelines compare and what factors go into that. And so the next question actually talks about that, or addresses that rather. And so what was, doesn't have to be like the number one, but like what was one of the biggest obstacles for you to finding that right path, would you say?
The biggest, I think, would be executive function issues. They might have been gender issues, but I transitioned when I was 18 or so that like stopped being as big of an issue in my 20s. I have like ADHD, and it affects all aspects of my life, and it's always a struggle, and especially was in college because there was more things to keep track of.
Yeah, I as regular listeners or watchers will know, I also have ADHD or ADD. I haven't actually been formally tested, but yeah, I've been struggling with that a lot more in recent times. Something about the structure of like higher education seemed to help me with that, I guess. And when I'm kind of left to my own devices, I tend to kind of get a bit more scattered and chaotic. So hence the structure of this show and kind of the series of questions I can just kind of follow makes it easier than trying to just like, what did I want to ask? Yeah. So another question here. I'm still not totally sure if I'm going to keep it, but would you consider yourself a shy person?
I would consider myself shy, but kind of extroverted. I'm not. Those two combine in fun ways. Like I get social anxiety, but also if I'm not around other people regularly, my brain does weird things. But yeah, I think I'm a little shy.
You're not the only one to give an answer like that. And this is another thing, like each person I interview and I get to find out, like interviewing a bunch of different people and asking them all the same questions, it's just interesting to kind of hear what the different answers are from, or this, yeah. Yeah, so we're going to kind of roll forward into the next series of questions. I have a loose kind of, I guess, four sections roughly of questions that are kind of themed together. So again, along with the idea of having everything figured out by age 30, there's this other idea, at least I've experienced, I feel like this is a thing, that, once we grow up, once we're adults, we're supposed to just behave and be mature and be responsible. And we're not really supposed to like goof around or be silly or playful unless, we're doing it with like a kid or something. We're not just supposed to do it for the sake of doing it for our own enjoyment. So, but I want to combat that because that's an essential part of the human experience. So what was the last silly or playful thing that you did on purpose?
I don't really keep track of that sort of thing. But like, because I kind of just disregard the entire notion that I should be serious and professional, beyond like respecting other human beings. But some things I do relatively often. I often wear mismatched socks on purpose, just because it seems fun. Sometimes I get bored, like with the way that I sleep, and will sleep in the opposite orientation in my bed, just because I think it's fun and it entertains me for some reason. Little things like that.
I appreciate those answers. I really do. I like that you're intentionally kind of flipping the script and just kind of just because. That's really great. So the next question in our series of questioning here is, what is the last new thing that you learned, or the last new thing that you tried? So either like a fact or a skill. And what is something, doesn't have to be the next thing, but what's something you'd like to learn and something you'd like to try?
So about a month ago, a Twitter friend of mine, Ellie Sage RN, introduced me to rock climbing, and that has kind of become an obsession of mine. Like, obsession is absolutely a proper word for it, because I've been doing it almost every day for the past month, ever since she introduced me to it. Something I would like to try soon. I like aviation a lot, but it seems kind of unapproachably expensive. There are like paragliding and paramotoring communities, which paramotoring is like paragliding, but you strap a big fan to your back. That seems kind of fun. If a little dangerous in Colorado because of wind patterns around mountains, but I know there's a community here that does it. If I ever get disposable income that I don't want to spend on skiing or climbing, I might look into that.
Yeah, that's actually something I'm also interested in, and I have a friend who's a pilot who, or well, that's not their main career, but it is something that they do. They do have a pilot's license, and I want to interview a pilot because, like, how interesting and cool would that be? So I'm trying to convince them. If not them, then hopefully I can find another pilot. But I've spent a lot of time on YouTube watching videos about kind of aviation, and like actually, it's more like kind of famous plane crashes and just how they figured out what caused it. And like, you know, I just love learning how things work, even if it's through, unfortunately, like a tragedy or a disaster. But also, and like, you know, the movie Sully, just lots of stuff like that is right up my alley, as far as like what I get to learn from it. So yeah, that's very cool. And actually, skydiving is something that I'm
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
yeah, it's like yeah. So I have like a growing bucket list as well from talking to people and getting ideas from them as well, or like reminding, oh yeah, I like that too. Okay, where are we here? Okay, so yes, this next question might be a bit tricky, but I like the answers that it's been getting. What would you say are your two most dissimilar hats? And in this context, hats means either a skill or an interest.
Um, I thought about this for a while. You're right. It is an interesting question. It's not something I'd ever really thought about before. I think programming and skiing. Programming is very mental, like almost entirely mental, and it's very like ideally very like hyper organized and structured, and you have to be very proactive about things, and you have to consider the future. But skiing is like, it's almost entirely like reflexes and muscle memory, and very physical and reactive. And there's a little bit of forethought in it. Like, I should decide not to go down a slope that is prone to avalanches or is going to lead to a cliff. But like beyond that, like, it's almost entirely seeing the terrain that is coming at you and reacting to it quickly and appropriately, or slowing down so that you don't have to react to it as quickly and appropriately. But yeah, it's those two.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's reminds me, like, I've been kind of getting similar answers like that of one thing's kind of more of like a physical thing, and another thing's more like a mental organizational thing. And I have that myself as well, certainly. And I get what you're saying too, because I like to ride my bike a lot, and that's kind of a thing. It's like, you have to watch for like debris and for opening car doors and pedestrians and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, it's just a very like kind of focused activity. Yeah, thank you for that.
Mhm.
So, next question here. What is your schedule generally like, and do you have a peak time of day?
I did not have a schedule. I try to have a schedule. I don't. Um, like I work 9 to 5 usually. That varies depending on personal needs and doctor visits and sometimes insomnia. Like most of the variation, aside from like personal scheduling conflicts, is ADHD related. It's There's just an element of chaos in my life that I have to accept and manage. So no schedule.
Do you have like, is there a time of day where you feel the most like on or the most engaged? Like, not based on you have to be, but just that's what naturally feels like this is when I am the most productive, or I feel the most. Uh, I don't know what to call it, so I'm just kind of gesturing.
Probably 3 to 4 hours after I've woken up. Uh, in a work day, that's going to be like late mornings, sometimes afternoon. Um, if it's a ski weekend, I tend to get up very early to avoid traffic. So around 11. I
So
think it
do you,
depends more
yeah.
on which time I wake up.
Yeah, and so like on weekends when you don't have to be up for the job, are you still kind of more morning oriented?
No,
Okay.
only if I have to ski, because if I don't get up early, there is no skiing because I won't be able to get up the mountain because of traffic.
Hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I'm not a morning person.
Okay. I was just like, oh, good, I found another morning person. Oh, wait, not quite. Because yeah, I feel like morning people, and I know it's not actually true, but in my experience, morning people are very rare. I don't meet very many people who are like, oh yeah, I'm definitely a morning person. So,
I do
um,
like mornings. It's just I can't make myself go to bed on time usually, so I can't appreciate the morning because I have precluded it from my day. But when I am able to do that, when I am able to like schedule my day well enough to go to bed on time and do adulting, then I do like mornings.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience to kind of flip it, because I've heard from other people that same kind of thing of like when they actually get to experience like a sunrise, or kind of the quiet and the calmness of the mornings. It's nice to them when they're normally always up late, and for me, it's like the inverse when I actually end up being up much later than usual. And it's just like, oh, this is interesting. Yeah, so. Continuing on with the questions here. Actually, I'm going to pause here because I forgot to put this in. I want to just take a brief second to thank my Patreon patrons, because I have a few of them now. So recently, Billy Schultz of the Nothing to Fear podcast and Queer and Time Kitchen on Instagram joined my Patreon. And thank you again, Billy. And check out the podcast and her cooking show. And we also have my friend of mine, Lexi, and another person. So starting to build the empire from the ground up, which is pretty cool. So I just wanted to say thanks and give a little shout out there. So yeah, the next question here. So with this pandemic, obviously the pandemic has disrupted everyone's lives, or pretty much everyone's lives, and for some people that's worked out in some, that's resulted in some better things. For other people, it's been not so good. But to try and stick with the positive side of that, are there any silver linings or positives that have resulted in your life specifically because of the pandemic disruption?
Um, I think it's connected me more to trans Twitter a lot. Uh, Someone I think you interviewed before, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
I joined their community that they manage, and at least early in the pandemic, I was going to semi-weekly video hangouts that I would attend, and I made some friends there, and I still talk to some of them. And that was really nice and positive. I would like to get back to that, actually. I'm just bad at scheduling.
Yeah, that's that I joined that community right at the beginning of this year, and I didn't really get active until probably in the spring, late spring kind of time. And yeah, there's a lot of really cool people on there, and
Yeah.
I actually, well, because I do a lot of design work kind of just on the side as a hobby, which is on my merch store, hint, hint. And so sometimes I post designs that I'm working on there to kind of get feedback, because a lot of them end up being like trans-centric or LGBTQ-centric. Just seems to be where a lot of my ideas come from these days. But I like to just kind of post things there and get a bit of feedback before I post it more broadly and publicly. But yeah, there's a few people I recognize from trans Twitter who are on there here and there. So yeah, definitely check out Laura's trans peer network, and look at I'm underscore just underscore Lore on Twitter to get the invite for that if you're interested. Yeah, and so I know you did touch on this earlier on in the intro, or sort of more towards the beginning of the show, but with the mental health. So um, everybody has a mental health, as we've established on previous episodes, and it can be in various range or various degrees of health or not. But do you want to talk a bit more about the mental health struggles that you've faced and how you've worked through them?
Well, the big one is ADHD for sure. I also have some anxiety issues, but they're very well managed with medication, really. Um, and I have periodic like bouts with depression, but they haven't had as profound an effect on my life as like ADHD has. Usually ADHD is the cause of that. So like, but to deal with it, mostly I have had a lot of help from family and friends over the years. That I've been pretty lucky in that regard, I think. Like my immediate family is pretty much always there for me, to the extent that they can be, because they have like their own mental health issues as well. But like it's been very helpful to me. I don't think I could have made it this far on my own at all. For ADHD, I also, to a degree, can, like, if I have a very load bearing kind of need, then I'll try to embed it in my routine, because otherwise I'll forget about it, and just it's gone. For some things, embedding something into my routine works fairly well. I don't really classify trans things as mental health issues per se, but for like gender dysphoria specifically, when I was a kid, I would use disassociation a lot. I don't know that I would recommend other people to do that. I also don't know that I even had a choice as a kid. It's how I got into video games and stuff. Because when I was a kid, like dysphoria for me was pretty overwhelming until I transitioned. But nowadays, like it's more manageable. I still have some for like some specific things, but it's not as big of a deal. So now, like disassociation, I don't really think it's helping anymore. It's more of a bad habit that I'm trying to unlearn, but it helped in the past.
I've heard a bunch of people talk about disassociation, and I kind of more recently I've had a couple of moments where I'm like, is this what that is? Because I hadn't really, like, I had an idea of what I thought it was, but I've never actually looked it up and like researched it and to try and understand it better. But yeah, I've had a couple of moments recently where I was like, that was kind of weird, and I sort of felt like, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but that's something I need to look into a little bit more myself. But yeah, a lot of the same struggles as you. I don't really have had anxiety as much, but maybe I'm discounting myself, because maybe I would have had that more in the past and I don't really remember as well. But the ADHD definitely, and the depression a little bit more recently. But thankfully doing pretty well right now, all considered. Um, yeah, and so you also did mention the support from people close to you, and that's something I've added to the show now as a new piece, because I realize that does also relate to all this stuff, like how we get where we are and what we're doing. And but I'm more curious on that one specifically. how are the people close to you in your life? How did they were they supportive of the like path that you wanted to be on, or did they think maybe you should do something different, or keep your options open, or things like that? Or has it been pretty supportive?
For trans-related things, they were not universally supportive, especially not at first, but they came around, I think. When I was 18 or 19, my mother played a pretty big role in helping me navigate finding an endocrinologist and a psychiatrist. I'm not sure I could have done that on my own. Like for ADHD, they've been understanding, and like my mother let me live with her for a very long time. And before I like got to a point where I could mostly manage my own affairs, that was very helpful to me. And my sisters are pretty emotionally supportive, and to an extent they're all sort of like the cisgender people trying to be good relatives to a trans sibling or child, and they're not perfect, but like I don't think I could have asked for a better family.
That's lovely to hear. Yeah, like I said, I'm glad I kind of thought of this because it definitely relates to it, and how, because like I know for myself, I've had, um, my two parents have had very kind of different approaches to what I do or what I wanted to do. Because originally, I've always been really creative and interested in like design and music and stuff like that. And I actually did used to do programming as well a long time ago, which I did enjoy, but I think I was just too creatively motivated that didn't that was overridden by a desire to do other things. But yeah, my dad was very much like, get into the trades, and my mom was just like, I just want you to do what makes you happy, but try to do something that's, not just going to have you be a starving artist. But so it was, yeah. And of course, with the trans thing, like the family support there definitely makes a huge difference. Um, so I guess a bit of a fitting follow-up to that, the next question in our series. It's slightly out of order here, but it's okay. So the premise of this question is sometimes failure is a good thing, because sometimes you try something and you fail at it and you realize, hey, that wasn't right for me, but now I think this other thing is better for me. And so failing can help you find the right things. So I'm curious to ask, what is something that you failed at in your life that you're really glad that you failed at because it was for the best?
Having ADHD, I fail at things very often, most things. Sometimes it feels like a constant barrage of little failures. That in general, it's made me like, I think, very tenacious and resilient. I just have to kind of get up and try again no matter what, because it just happens so often. For some of those things, I might never succeed ever, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to that in a sense as well. There's a lot of people with ADHD. I don't know if you've had this experience so much, but a lot of starting new things and not finishing a lot of things, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm actually kind of amazed that, like, because I've always had a bunch of different projects on the go, and it's just been hard because like I needed something that, like, if I was only writing, I would get bored of writing eventually. And if I was only doing music, I would get bored of music eventually. And so I had to keep bouncing around to keep myself from getting bored. And so finally, like, so I had these different, like, I call them verticals, I guess, in like the marketing world, of the different sort of streams of things that a company does. And so I have my different verticals, but yeah, then I would have new ideas. I'm like, oh, I want to try this thing. I want to do this thing. And so I found this project now, which is scratching so many of my itches, and really fulfilling a lot of my desires and my goals. And I'm still doing some of the other streams of mine, but it's a little bit easier now to manage, because instead of trying to do like six different things at once, I'm kind of really only doing like two and a half, or yeah, two and a half. And that makes it a little bit easier to manage.
That
But
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, I still failed stuff totally. And it's just kind of like, I guess I'm I'm in so far now. I'm just like, I want to keep doing this. So if things don't go right, I just gotta keep, like this show itself has evolved so much since I started, and like I've added so many questions and I've dropped some, and now I finally found a set that I feel like this is the set. This is what the show is, and so that makes me happy. Um, so I don't know how you feel about giving people advice, but I am curious to. I want to do this in three parts. So if you were to give advice to a teenager, or if you were to give advice to someone your age, and if you were to give advice to an elder, because actually the preface for this I forgot to say, is that we usually think of giving advice as like something that only older people do to younger people, but recently it was brought to my attention that like anybody can teach anybody and give anybody like insight and perspective. So I'm curious to hear what advice you would give to a teen, to someone your age, and to like an elder.
For a teenager, like, I don't know about what the high school experience is these days, but for me, as a trans person in high school in the early 2000s, high school is absolutely awful, and everything ever seems like the hugest deal. But like once it's over, you'll learn nearly all of it is completely inconsequential to the rest of your life. And once it's over, and everything gets better. For people my age, vote and treat trans people better and treat people of color better. For grandparents, I would say don't worry too much about like what's going to happen after like you're gone, or at least with my dad, that's been something he's worried about, like making sure I'm okay and that my sisters are going to be okay. I would say that my generation is strong, and Gen Z is strong, and Gen X is strong, and we got this.
That's lovely. I really like that answer. This is sort of the first time that has been answered in its like current form, and that's a great start. So thank you for that. And I do agree. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing. And obviously, there's always room for improvement and growth. But
Yes.
from what I'm seeing of sort of fellow millennials and Zoomers, as they're being called in some spaces, like it is getting better, and it's just taking time. But I think things are, what is it? The phrase that I've heard? The arc of justice is long, but bends something. I don't know. I'll look it up and I'll stick it on the screen afterwards, because I can remember Adam Savage saying it from the MythBusters or something like that, and I just can't quite pull it. But I'll move on. So yeah, the kind of last question before we kind of do the ending parts. Is there any question, whether from this show itself or something completely unrelated, that you would like to ask me? And you don't have to, obviously.
I was going to ask how you got into streaming. It seems like a fun hobby.
So I don't actually stream this. It's all pre-recorded, and then I like edit it and then I post it. But so how I got into this, basically the short version is about 7 years ago, I was doing a podcast where it was just audio, and I was interviewing people, and I was actually asking them specifically about their jobs or like their hobby, if it was something that they were really knowledgeable about, and just to learn from them. And because I wanted to share, I like learning and I like sharing what I learn. That's kind of my life cycle. So I was doing that for a couple of years, and then that stopped. And then later I was like, I want to do that again. And so but I wanted to do it a little differently. So I did a talk show, and I was doing kind of like this, but it was actually in person, sitting next to the person. And that one was really like random fact based. And I had fun doing that, but for various reasons, it couldn't continue. And again, after a couple of years of not doing it, it's like, man, I really miss interviewing people. I really enjoy it, and I want to do it again. And so that's kind of how this came up. And it's like between those two projects and other things that I've seen and learned, this is really like the culmination of all of that. And it's just, I don't want to call it perfect, but it's really great, and I'm really glad I'm doing it. So yeah, that's kind of the short version, I guess, or short-ish. Yeah, thanks for asking.
Thank you for indulging me.
Yeah, I only started giving people this opportunity a couple of episodes ago, so I'm a little. Some people are going to ask, like I was asking, what's your favorite dinosaur? And that really caught me off guard. But some questions I'll be able to be like, I know what I'm going to say to this. But yeah, to get a little bit more serious again and to start to kind of, hit the stick the landing here. I don't know what to call it otherwise. Are there any specific causes or charities that you'd like to promote or raise awareness of?
I would like to remind people that Black Lives Matter protests are still happening. If you're in a major city, there's almost certainly one in your city, or I mean, they're almost certainly still happening in your city in large numbers. If you're able to find a relevant organization and a protest buddy and put some boots on the ground, wave a sign around.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. And as the viewers will be aware, there is a little Black Lives Matter button on the screen at all times, because that is definitely something the show supports and I support. And I make sure with my guests beforehand, like, just so you know, this is our stance. So hopefully I'm not going to have anyone try to trick me and get on here and be a terrible person. But you'll never see that because it won't air, obviously. And when I say you'll never see it, I mean the audience. Yeah, so I definitely agree with that. And at the end of the show, I have a dedicated screen at the very, very end on YouTube that lists like kind of a bunch of, I want to say general charities, but that's kind of what they are. And it's also on the website, hatcollecting.com. So you can check there. And yeah. So I guess we're going to do plugs now before we do our little hat sign off. So if anyone wants to find you and see what you do and kind of like, I don't know if you're on anything other than Twitter or if you want to share anything other than Twitter.
I'm just on Twitter, really. It's at OKBillyBunny. OK being the letters O and the letter K, and then just the name Billy and the word bunny.
Is there a story behind that name? I've actually been curious.
It's just was me being silly when I was in my early 20s, and I haven't changed it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was like, if you ever did change that, because I know your like display name is Circuit Broad, but if you ever changed that, and I didn't remember the like at handle, I'd be like, oh my god, I can't find her now. Yeah, so, and it's my plug, so I gotta try to keep these quick. I've got a lot of stuff as I sort of mentioned before. So I actually just posted a couple of new designs to my merch store last night, and so those are there, and I'll put links in the show notes and everything. I might even put a little thing up on the screen so you can see them. The listeners obviously won't be able to see that, but they are, well, one of them's more like lesbian centric and it's kind of a little bit cheeky, and then the other one is trans femme specific, and I've got a couple more I'm working on that just not quite ready yet. I also, so the website for that, artemismerch.com, which some people have problems with, it doesn't redirect properly for everyone. Otherwise you can go redbubble.com/people/artemiscreates and that should take you there. And yeah, I have music on Spotify, iTunes, Bandcamp, all that stuff. The theme music for the show is on there. It's called The Bronze Age. And I also have the Curiosity Guides, which is a series of educational ebooks that I've done over the last 5 years, and they're all available for free. Just, again, stuff I learned, and I put it in a digestible form for people. So you can go and get that. And anything else? That's, I guess, pretty much, again, the Nothing to Fear podcast and Queer and Time Kitchen on Instagram. I definitely think you should check those out. And yeah, so we'll do our hat sign off, and then we will be doing switching over to do the bonus episode, which goes on Patreon only. So if you want to hear more from Caroline and some of the fun questions that I have for us, that's where you can do it. So that's patreon.com/artemiscreates. And yeah, so I guess, well, I start to get really excited and look forward to this, and I hope the viewers do too, because I have a big collection of hats here, and I'm always like, what's the guest gonna have? And so now, yeah, I'm gonna see. I didn't test if this hat fits over my headphones yet. It might.
Mine definitely does not.
Okay, so that's the
I'm
front.
not sure how I'm going to work the headphones. We'll see. It'll be fun. It'll be an adventure.
All right, well, I'll go first then. Oh my god, that actually works really
That's
well.
pretty. It does work well.
Wow.
I love the rose.
Yeah.
It's very red. Mine's also red. Well, kind of. It's red and purple.
Yeah, you told me that. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought you were taking them off. Caroline is currently adjusting her headphones so that she can put. Oh boy, that's. Oh my goodness, I love that. Yeah, you're muted. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I muted myself so that I would not make
And
noise
that's a
adjusting
skiing
my headset in awkward ways.
That's a skiing helmet?
It's my ski helmet, yes.
Yeah, okay. That's awesome. I love that.
I can't fit it on my head. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate the effort. I just got lucky with this one. Yeah, so because I have to remember for the listeners. So I am wearing I'm not sure what kind of hat you would call this. It's sort of like a bit like a fedora, but more of like a tube and less of a brim, and it's got like a flower, like a fabric flower kind of thing on the front, and it's red because we're both wearing red. And Caroline is wearing a ski helmet, which is kind of like a purplish burgundy color, and it has a pair of goggles that are like there's like a gradient happening there. It's from like a royal purple to like a magenta to like an orange, kind of yellowish orange.
Something like that.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I'm just like I'm transfixed. I'm like, ooh, shiny.
I'm not going to be able to hear anything momentarily,
Okay.
but I'm going to put my hat on all the way and pull the visor down because it seems silly.
Okay. Oh, that made my day. Thank you for that.
Okay, that is done.
That was amazing. See, I like to grab a screenshot when we're both wearing our hats, and so that was a great spot. I'm going to grab that one for sure.
Excellent. Now my hair is a poof.
Yes, it is, which mine would be too if, yeah.
Except my hair is now permanently attached to my headset.
Oh, no. Okay, well, we better stop down and let you get a chance to detangle that so we can do the bonus. But thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And again, if you want to check out the bonus episodes, they're on Patreon, and there's going to be other bonus content there as well. And again, patreon.com/ArtemisCreates. Check out Caroline on Twitter at OKBillyBunny. And I'm at on Twitter and Instagram, I'm Artemis_creates because somebody else took it without the underscore first. But everywhere else, I'm just Artemis Creates. But yeah, we're gonna stop this now. And, oh wait, we have to. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. We have to actually. I'll wave. I'll put my hat back on and wave goodbye. No, don't worry about it. You've got like your headset's kind of a hat anyways. Oh yeah, you can hold it up. Okay, that works. All right, so yeah, we will. Wave. I will. Yeah, there you go. So thank you for watching, and until next time, thanks for collecting hats with us.